released the body of Jesus to Joseph of Arimathea, a member of the Sanhedrin and a secret follower of Jesus. Then, having brought a linen shroud, Joseph took the body of Jesus down, wrapped him in the linen, and laid him in the tomb which had been cut out of rock. Finally, he rolled a large stone across the entrance of the tomb. Meanwhile, I and Mary, the mother of Joseph, were looking on and observed where Jesus had been laid. When the Sabbath was over, I, Mary, the mother of James, and Salome brought perfumed oils so we could anoint the body of our beloved Jesus. As was our custom, very early, just after sunrise on the first day of the week, we came to the tomb. On the way there, we were saying to one another, "Who will roll back the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" When we looked, we found that the huge stone had already been rolled back. On entering the tomb, we saw a young person sitting at the right, dressed in a white robe. As you might imagine, we were very frightened, but the youth reassured us, "Do not be amazed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, the one who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. Now go and tell the disciples and Peter, Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee, where you will see him just as he told you." At that, we hurried away from the tomb with awe and great joy and ran to carry the good news to the disciples. Suddenly, Jesus stood before us and said, "Shalom." We were in shock, and so we fell at Jesus' feet, embracing them and worshipped. At this, Jesus said to us, "Don't be afraid. Go tell the disciples to go to Galilee, where they will see me." After all these years, I can see how amazing this story must seem to you all. But this was our experience. It has filled us with eternal hope and joy. Eternal. I hope it does the same for you. Shalom and happy Easter.
Thank you, Mary of Magdala, for coming from 2,000 years ago into our present-day reality to share that wonderful story with us. So happy Easter, Bedford United Church. Yes, and a special warm welcome to any of you who might be visiting with us this morning on this Easter morning. It's got to be. So let me do an informal poll. Is Christmas Eve or Easter the happier time for most of you? Who goes for Christmas Eve? Put your hands up. Yeah. How about Easter? Yeah, sort of half and half, right? It's a bit of a toss-up, but Easter is one of those incredibly happy days in the Christian calendar and in the Christian year. After the gloom and the doom and all the crucifixion stuff and the nails and the hammers and all of that stuff from Good Friday, we come to Easter. And we come to the rolling away of the stone in front of the tomb. We come to the stories of the women who see Jesus alive once again, and they throw their arms around his feet and they worship him. We come to the stories of Jesus on the road with Emmaus, meeting his disciples, and they don't recognize him right away, and then all of a sudden, boom, they say, "Oh, that was Jesus, for goodness sakes." We come to the story of doubting Thomas, remember, and he's in a room with some disciples, and he says, "Jesus, he ain't alive. This is nonsense that you're telling me." They say, No, it's true. And all of a sudden, zoop, through the walls, Jesus appears, and there he is, and doubting Thomas says, I can't say what he really said, but you have the scripture versions, but doubting Thomas says, "Wow, so Jesus, you are alive." And then we also have the stories, right, of Jesus, his disciples. They're all kind of, some of them are in a bit of a funk, and they've gone back to their regular day jobs of fishing on the Sea of Galilee. And then one morning, Jesus shows up on the seaside, and he puts on breakfast for them. It wasn't pancakes, I think it was fish and bread, but anyways, he's there, and they come over, and he even has breakfast for them. It's such a good news story, right? It's such a cheery kind of time of year. Now, when I was a little kid, I loved all those stories. I just loved them, and I had picture Bibles, and the Bibles were filled with pictures of them, and they just captured my imagination. And I always felt really, really good on Easter, thinking about how Jesus had come back to life with his disciples, and my brothers had drowned, and that sort of made me feel really, really good as well. And so it was just Easter was a very special time in my life. But then as I got a little bit older, like we all do, and we're sort of raised in this kind of materialistic, kind of skeptical society, I started thinking somewhere along the line, I wonder if those stories, if they really happened the way they say they happened, or whether they were just stories. And then, of course, I end up going to seminary, I end up going to theological school, and of all places, where you would think they'd tell you, absolutely, that's the way it happened. I go to seminary and they say, no, none of that stuff really happened. None of that stuff really happened. Those are just stories. Those are really just stories that the early church told to try and express some deeper truth. But they didn't really happen that way. Oh my God. It reminds me of Kinza, my daughter, right? When she was, I think she must have been 6 or 7 at the time, at least, right? And it's Easter morning, and Danielle, as with many of you, there was the Easter egg hunt had taken place, and it's somewhere in the midst of the Easter egg hunt, and Kinza comes up to her mommy, and she says, she was kind of a thinker even back then. She says, "Mommy, did the Easter bunny really bring all this stuff?" And her mother has to say to her, and Danielle's, she's a principled kind of person. She says to Kinza, sweetie, she says, "I told you once before that I would never lie to you, didn't I?" Danielle didn't even have to go any further. The little tears start trickling down her cheeks, right? And then, I remember this so clearly, and then you can see the wheels clicking, and a light bulb goes on in her head, and she says, "Mommy, does that mean that Santa Claus and her mom has to go?" And the tears come down her cheek. In one fell swoop, her mother just undercut her belief in both Easter and Christmas. I've never forgiven her. It's kind of the same thing with these stories, right? All these Easter stories in the Bible, right? You go to seminary and then one fell swoop, they say, "Oh, no." And so you end up kind of feeling like Woody Allen. Somebody once said to Woody Allen, "Woody, what's your opinion on death?" And Woody says, "I'm not for it." I'm not for it, right? And so it becomes a real challenge to you as a preacher, as a minister. So how do I talk about this stuff then, right? I always thought that these stories talk about life after death, and that life carries on, and God will resurrect us after we die into some kind of new life. And so as a minister, you start to think about the stories much more metaphorically and symbolically, and you start thinking, well, no, the stories are actually symbolic of the way in which new life emerges out of difficult challenges in this life. So how many of you have ever experienced something challenging or difficult in your life? Oh, come on, some of you are lying, absolutely. Put your hands up. And so you know that, and what I've often preached about, and I've preached it on many an Easter morning, is that it's in those circumstances when you open your heart to God and to the power of God's Spirit, if you're looking for new life possibilities, they can emerge, and they do emerge. And that's the wonder and the power of the resurrection. Well, that's all fine and dandy, and I've preached that sermon many times, and it's very true. But it still leaves you with that nagging feeling, so what about that life after death business? And you wonder about that. Well, I'm here this morning to tell you, and you know me, we're going to take an Easter morning romp through contemporary science. Because let me tell you, today it's contemporary science that is saying, no, there's life after death. The theological schools are saying, no, we're not sure, it's all kind of stories. But scientists are saying, no, we really believe there is life after death. And so you're going to leave here much cheerier this morning. You're going to leave here much happier after I do this little romp through science with you. You're going to leave much happier. You might be a little confused, but you're going to leave much happier, okay? So let me begin this little romp with asking you to imagine. I want you to imagine that you're living in Italy in the year 1615, okay? You're living in Italy. Wouldn't you all like to be in Italy this morning? I mean, really, Good Friday was beautiful and it's gray out there. In Italy, the sun always shines, right, supposedly. So Italy, 1615. It's the time of the Inquisition. It's the time of Galileo, right? And you all know what Galileo did, right? Galileo says to the people in Italy in his day and age, he says, now listen, folks, he says, I've got a new theory about reality and life in the universe. In actual fact, the sun does not spin around the earth. It's the earth that revolves around the sun. And if you were living back in 1615 in Italy, you would have said, Galileo, you're nuts. You're absolutely nuts. You've got it all wrong. It is quite obvious that the earth does not move. I'm standing here, except in an earthquake. The earth is solid. It's not going anywhere. And every single day, I see the sun moving around the earth, so I know that the sun moves, for crying out loud. You're nuts, Galileo. Well, what did Galileo prove? Galileo proved that we're all nuts. Galileo proved that our senses have radically deceived us, that we are all duped. In actual fact, the earth is going around the sun at 110,000 kilometers an hour. Can you feel that? 110,000 kilometers an hour, we know today. The earth is traveling. Our senses have betrayed us. So, modern day Galileo. Who is our most famous modern day Galileo? Well, Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein is our most famous modern day Galileo. And Einstein has also taken on Galileo's task of saying to us in our modern day and age, you know what? Our senses continue to dupe us. Our senses continue to betray us. Reality is not at all what our senses portray it to be. And what Einstein, there are two areas in which Einstein shows us, and the one has to do with space. Isaac Newton, go back a little ways, Isaac Newton, the father of sort of contemporary materialistic science, the science that you all learned in schools, and that is totally outdated at this point in time. It still works to a certain degree, but it's totally outdated. Newton says space is something real, and the whole universe is sort of hangs on space and fits inside space. Space is this real kind of absolute construct. Einstein comes along and says, Newton, you're absolutely wrong. Space is not real at all. In fact, space is a relative kind of phenomena that is based on actually the perception of the perceiver. So Einstein says, the faster you're moving through space, what happens to space? It actually contracts. So space actually contracts. Space contracts and it expands. It has a relative reality. It's a reality that's dependent on the perception and the awareness of the observer. It doesn't have any kind of absolute solidity or reality at all. In fact, if you're going at the speed of light, you can basically take the entire universe and fit it into this room. It's an amazing kind of thing. So along comes Robert Lanza. How many of you have read any of Robert Lanza's stuff? You may have heard him on Ideas this past week on CBC. Very good. So Robert Lanza is one of the world's foremost scientists. Time has listed him as one of the 100 most important people in the world today. He's a biologist. And Robert Lanza has gone on to say, now listen, and he's promoting this idea called BioCentrism. So this is solid kind of scientific thinking here. Lanza says, if space isn't real, if according to Einstein, space is this kind of relative phenomena that shifts and shapes, it doesn't have any absolute quality to it, then what does that mean for these bodies? I wonder if these bodies are. Lanza says, you know what I think? I think these physical bodies that seem so physical are just an incredibly powerful mental construct of something that is non-material, something that we can call awareness or consciousness itself. How many of you watch any of those science fiction movies that say, when your body is, the scientist comes to the end of his rope and they decide, I'm going to download my consciousness. I don't even know what's the difference. Is it download or upload? I don't know what it is. It's you either download or upload your consciousness into a computer. This is real speculation amongst real scientists in the world today, that consciousness is an independent, fundamental, absolute quality that exists independently of the body. How many of you have heard about people or know people who've had phantom limb syndrome? Phantom limb syndrome, right? So people who don't have limbs, the speculation is that mind or consciousness can create your sensation of a body without there actually being a physical body there, or parts of your body without there actually being those physical parts there. How many of you ever had dreams? Oh, you poor folks. So depressing. If you've ever had dreams, and you know that in dreams reality can seem very real, and you have a body and you're doing all sorts of stuff, you realize that in your dreams, your mind can create a sensation of a real kind of formulation of a body without there actually being any involvement of a physical body. So based on Einstein's breaking down the perceptions around space, a lot of biologists and contemporary scientists today are saying, I wonder if this whole supposedly material physical reality is just a powerful mental construct or delusion. It's not a delusion, but it's a powerful mental construct created by mind and awareness and consciousness itself. Second delusion that Einstein put to rest. And which one is that? That's the delusion around time. Okay, so let's talk about time for just a minute. So Einstein says, in Newton's day, they thought time was an absolute reality as well. Time is the same for everybody. It's the same for everybody. It's the same wherever you are in the universe. No matter what's going on, time is just this kind of standard tick, 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 tick that the whole universe is based on. And Einstein goes on to say, no. That's all nonsense. Time is also a reality that is dependent upon the conscious awareness of the observer. So you all know, you've all heard the science. If you get out into a spaceship and you tootle off to a distant galaxy, right, at the speed of light or close to the speed of light, and then when you come back to Earth, you don't want to do that. You really don't want to do that because you're going to have no friends left. They're all going to be dead, right? Time literally adjusts to the speed at which an observer is moving, which caused Einstein to say that the distinction between past, present, and future, the quote that I have in the bulletin this morning, is simply persistent, but it's an optical delusion. Time is also a relative thing. In actual fact, there is no before or after in time. I brought an anachronistic piece of vinyl to show you this morning. Just how many of you know this little piece of vinyl that I've got here this morning? Yeah, you're all just as old as I am. So this is Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. So here it is, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, and it's a great album to demonstrate this morning because it's got this great song on it called Time, right? So what physicists and cosmologists and scientists are saying today is, based on Einstein's work, that they consider reality to be a lot like one of these vinyl records. And for you young people, vinyl has come back into vogue, right? You own this one, Hannah. You're smooth, you're good. So what what physicists and cosmologists and a variety of scientists are saying today about time is that time is like a record. Okay, it's like a record. The needle, that you sit down on the record, is like our conscious awareness. Okay? So when the needle puts down on a record and it's playing through a song, that is your now. You're listening to reality, you're listening to a song in the now. But that needle can pick up and go, or it comes to the end of that song, and you might say, well, that song was in the past. But in actual fact, that song is still there. You can go back to it, or anyone else can go back to it, and it becomes a now once again. And it's the same thing with the songs on the other side of the song you're playing. They seem to be in the future, but in actual fact, you play that song, but then you go back and play another song, and then that song is no longer the past, it's still the future. It's like cosmologists are saying that our lives and every moment in our lives is imprinted on the universe just like a song is imprinted on a vinyl record. And our consciousness, when our consciousness sets down in one song, it experiences that song as the present moment. But our consciousness can lift up and go backwards and forwards through all of that because it's always there. It never disappears. That reality, that song will always be there. It can, if you go backwards, that song will be in the future. If you go in the future, that song will be in the past. It's all a relative kind of phenomena. Time does not exist, according to contemporary science, in any absolute real way. What is past and what is future, actually there is just the eternal now, this moment in which we reside. And that means to talk about before death or after death, what does that really mean? So what they're suggesting is that when somebody supposedly dies, this little slice of the song of their life has come to some kind of a conclusion, but that life is still imprinted, is still existent in the fabric of the universe in some form or fashion. And what's even more important is that the consciousness that played that song, the consciousness that is living this life, when this biological sort of entity comes to its conclusion, that consciousness just lifts up, lifts out, and travels and puts down in some other kind of song in some other kind of place, which then becomes their now, a new now once again. That makes total sense to all of you, I realize. So, these Easter morning stories, these wonderful Easter stories, biblical scholars and scientists both say to us, they probably didn't happen exactly the way they're told. But they do say that there is some essence in those stories. There is some depth to those stories. There was some essence to Jesus, some depth to Jesus that his disciples just knew. His friends just knew, he's not dead and gone forever. No, he's just lifted up out of this difficult, challenging life right at the moment. And he's still there in some form or fashion. And this life is still imprinted on the structure of the universe. And who knows, maybe he can still influence us in some kind of way. How many of you have ever been with a loved one when they have died? Yeah. You know what people say when they're with a loved one who has died? People so often say, and I was there with my mom too, and I've been there with many other people over the years. They say, no, you don't say, oh, she's now died, or he's died. What's the more common expression people use? She's passed away, or people say, she's left. She's left, or she's passed away. And you know that when you're beside a corpse, it's almost an eerie feeling, isn't it? That that corpse isn't the same as the person who was there a short while before. There is a fundamental ingredient that is missing, and it doesn't feel like it's terminated, it just feels like it's not there. It's picked up and it's left. And that's what science is suggesting more and more to us today. They're speculating that that is actually what happens. That there is a fundamental dimension or quality to human existence that constitutes consciousness, awareness itself. And this consciousness and this awareness gives the impression of time and space being something very real, but it's just a construct of that sort of mind-conscious kind of reality. And when this biological reality comes to an end, that consciousness just sort of lifts up, moves out, and travels into some other dimensions of space and time. So, the way I think about that is, God is a God of life. And it is true that new life comes out of old possibilities and challenging possibilities all the time in our daily lives. We all know that. We go through something difficult, we come through something challenging, and we look for a way to transform that, to turn that into something good, and we invoke the presence of Spirit into that, and yes, it happens all the time. Science seems to me to be saying, and I think our stories are saying, that what's true for the here and now is also true for the big picture and hereafter as well. If God is a God of life, surely God also takes that essence that makes us human in this life, and rather than just end, like Woody Allen saying, I'm not for it because, it's all over. No, God takes that and transforms that and turns that into something new and alive and blessed in some radically new and transformed kind of way. That's called resurrection. Aren't you feeling so much cheerier now? You may be feeling a little confused. Science is kind of backing up the resurrection. I kind of like it. It's kind of does my soul really, really good. Namaste, BUC. Happy Easter to one and all. Now, I'm going to invite us to state our new United Church of Canada creed. And Paul, you're going to put that on the screen. And one of the lines in this beautiful creed is, God is with us. We are not alone. In life, in death, in life beyond death, God is always with us. Let's stand and let's read this new creed together. We are not alone. We live in God's world. We believe in God, who has created and is creating, who has come in Jesus, the Word made flesh, to reconcile and make new, who works in us and others by the Spirit. We trust in God. We are called to be the church, to celebrate God's presence, to live with respect in creation, to love and serve others, to seek justice and resist evil, to proclaim Jesus, crucified and risen, our judge and our hope. In life, in death, in life beyond death, God is with us. We are not alone. Thanks be to God. Amen. Please be seated.
Times that I've seen you lose your way, you're not in control, and you won't be told. All I can do to keep you safe is hold you close, hold you close. Till you can breathe on your own. Till you can breathe on your own. Hold tight, you're slowly coming back to life. I'll keep your head up, I'll keep your head up, children. Let go of all your haunted dreams tonight. I'll keep your head up, I'll keep your head up, children. Hold tight, you're slowly coming back to life. I'll keep your head up, I'll keep your head up, children. Let go of all your haunted slowly coming back to life. I'll be keeping your head up. I'll be keeping your head up, children. Let go of all your haunted dreams tonight. I'll be keeping your head up. I'll be keeping your head up, children. Hold tight, you're slowly coming back to life. I'll be keeping your head up. I'll be keeping your head up, children. Let go of all your haunted dreams tonight. I'll be keeping your head up. I'll be keeping your head up. And I won't let you down. You never think that you can fly. You'll always swim against the tide. Don't you know your pain is mine? And I would die 1,000 times to ease your mind. To ease your mind. Hold tight, you're slowly coming back to life. I'll be keeping your head up. I'll be keeping your head up, children. Let go of all your haunted dreams tonight. I'll be keeping your head up. I'll be keeping your head up, children. Hold tight, you're slowly coming back to life. I'll be keeping your head up. I'll be keeping your head up, children. Let go of all your haunted dreams tonight. I'll be keeping your head up. I'll be keeping your head up. And I won't let you down.
Regenesis, you are wonderful. And I always love your name, Regenesis. It's like, it's a perfect name for Easter. It's what Easter is all about. It's coming back to life. It's new life once again. I'll invite our communion servers to come forward, please. The celebration of communion, which we always have on Easter, is always a festival of friends. It's about community. It's a pulling together of our loves and our hopes, our moments of agony, and our experiences of joy. And it is here where bread is broken and wine is shared that we can most fully be ourselves, totally ourselves, and see others for who they truly are. Every single one of us as a beautiful, embodied expression of the living God.
It is here, too, that we can reclaim the meaning of Easter, the message of new life. In the sharing of the bread and the drink from the vine, we are renewed, granted new energy, sustenance, and joy. All are welcome to this table of celebration and feasting. Seekers, wanderers, young and old, women and men, boys and girls, all genders, all colors of humanity under the sun are welcome at this celebration of new life. So come, let us taste and experience the sweetness of God's love.
God is alive.
God's Spirit surprises.
Christ is alive and demonstrating new life and hope for everyone.
And so hope is alive.
And joy is alive.
And God is with us.
And we are alive.
Let us give thanks to God. Join us in prayer.
We give thanks and praise to you, ever-living God, worker of wonders, maker of miracles, author of life, giver of new life. Through you, word becomes life, life becomes flesh, flesh becomes bread, and bread sustains life.
Through you, the pain of blood shed and the grief of life broken is transformed into wine, and the wine becomes joy. Through you, O God, wine bursts the wineskins, stones are rolled away, the tomb breaks open, and the universe breaks into song. Alleluia, alleluia.
Alleluia.
Send your Spirit upon us, and upon what we do, Easter God. Fill us with new life, that we and these gifts may be signs of life and love to each other
and to the world. Help
Help
us to love as Jesus loved. Help us to serve with generous and compassionate hearts and hands through Christ, with Christ, and in Christ, now and forevermore.
Amen.
My friends, this is bread of life. This is the wonder built into the structure of the universe that constantly sustains and renews life each and every moment of time. So be it. Amen.
And so, too, this is the cup of blessing. Thanks be to God.
We'll invite our musical team to come forward first to receive communion, and then we'll invite you to come forward by the center aisle and simply take a piece of bread out of the basket and have the bread, and then take a little cup of the juice and drink that, and then return to your seats by the side aisles. And as you do so, you can return the cup into the little basket, which is there on the side of each aisle. And for those of you who have intolerance to wheat and want something gluten-free, we do have a rice-based wafer as well for you. So come forward and let us eat and drink and be glad and rejoice in the gifts of new life. Pray. Oh, wondrous God, for the incredible joy and hope and demonstration of new possibilities and potentials that you revealed in Jesus are available for the whole universe and for each and every one of us. In this life, in death, in life beyond death, you are always the source of new life. You are God. Thank you for the gift of this day. Thank you for the gift of Jesus. And thank you for these gifts that we have just shared, that they may be a source of new life, new hope, and new courage as we go forth into the world and into our lives this day and every day. In the name of our brother Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Our closing hymn today is Jesus Christ is Risen Today, so please rise as you are able and sing with us.
reflection today, David spoke about science fiction, which was very exciting for me that I might be able to have a chance to talk about science fiction as well in the closing remarks. A lot of what he talked about, if you look through any sort of science fiction, there's time travel, there's consciousness changing and these sort of things. Super interesting, super fun, but at the same time, we're seeing more and more when you take the time of watching these science fiction that they are really tying in to these stories of Jesus, these stories of rebirth. You've got Anakin Skywalker, you've got Harry Potter, you've got all these stories that tie in so closely to our story of Easter this morning. So as you go out this week, let's remember that Easter is something that is part of the church, it's part of science. Rebirth and spring is all around us. Happy Easter, everyone.